Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full time so that you don't have to. This week, the Homunculus, an alchemical magical creation of artificial life. Similar in many ways, at least the roots and folklore are very similar to the Thrall. Historically, the Homunculus creation process was first attributed to the alchemical writings of Paracelsus. Paracelsus was a alchemical genius from the 1500s or the 1600s. In his book De Natura Rerum in 1537, his methods are so revolting they put the monster manual to shame. So this is Paracelsus' method. First you get a cucurbit, which is either a squash, pumpkin, cucumber, gourd, watermelon or cantaloupe, the cucurbit. And then you fill this with the sperm of a man and leave it to putrefy in the gourd for no less than 40 days inside a horse's womb. After this time it would look somewhat like a person, but tiny and transparent and without a body. There's a large body of philosophy in the ancient times where they thought that basically sperm contained miniature people. For the next 40 weeks, the creator has to keep feeding this thing human blood, or some extract of human blood, as the creature grows into a full but very small humanoid, which is then removed from the womb of the horse. All of this may have been inspired by the legendary mandrake root. Who knows? Ancient alchemists played around with toxic chemicals. They tended to be a little bit strange, to say the least. In Dungeons & Dragons, a homunculus is usually a tiny construct created by a spellcaster to act as a spy and servant. However, this was not always the case. They were introduced to the game in the first supplement, Greyhawk, in 1975. The version created for the D&D basic system is quite different. In the creature catalogue, published in 1986, it says that the homunculus simply appears as a 2-foot-tall creature usually, but is actually an immortal otherworldly being sentenced or sent on a mission to the prime material plane to serve out a period of servitude as penitence for some crime or transgression or as service to some higher power. A very important difference between the traditional mage-created blood-bound versions of these homunculus is that they are simply familiars, following generally the same rules as any other bound creature serving as a familiar. They do not share the sensory experiences with the mage, as will be explained a little bit when we get to the 5th edition and most recent incarnation. As a homunculus, the immortal serves its mortal master, who may be a cleric or a magic user. Homunculi generally serve their masters out of choice or duty, and although high-level characters occasionally bind homunculi to their service, this is a very risky business involving long, dangerous, and costly rituals of magic. There are 3 types of homunculus, one for each alignment, and although superficially similar, each has its own strengths and weaknesses. All of the homunculi are immune to non-magical weapons as well as cold and fire-based attacks. They can become invisible and may detect evil and magic at will. They all regenerate damage at the rate of 1 hit point per round, and this ability is passed on to their master as a familiar, as long as the character is within 10 feet of the homunculi. The homunculi use their magical abilities as if they were high-level wizards, so they're pretty potent with their spellcasting. As long as it's a willing servant, a homunculus can communicate telepathically with its master up to a distance of 1 mile. The master is able to use all their senses, including dark vision, of the homunculus as long as it stays within a mile of him or her, and if the character is in actual physical contact with the homunculus, he or she gains a +3 to all saving throws, or I imagine would be an advantage to saving throws that the homunculus has advantage on. Once per week, a homunculus may use its own special knowledge and insight to help its master make some important decision. The assistance gives it the equivalent of a commune spell. If a homunculus is ever reduced to 0 hit points, its body on the prime material plane is destroyed, and its life force will return to the plane whence it originally came. The character with whom the homunculus served will not be granted a replacement for at least 1 year, and will suffer a permanent loss of 1d4 plus 1 hit points. As mentioned, the immortal homunculi come in 3 types, associated with law or good, neutrality, or chaos and evil. There's also a few more to cover after these 3. The hideous and evil Ulzag have misshaped features, scaly skin and gnarled horns protruding from a small head. Unlike the other homunculi, Ulzag they can't fly without first polymorphing into a bat. They can also turn into a frog. In their normal form, they attack with a bite of their filthy fangs and talons, and any wound inflicted by them in any form can cause an infection which imparts the poison condition until removed by magic or medicine. That's wounds caused by their fangs or their talons. If the victim gains any levels of exhaustion under this condition, they will fall unconscious until they receive assistance. The Ulzag are also resistant to lightning and can cause confusion, spell-like effects, once per day. The lazy and dismissive Lumpy and Greyish Gretch are winged and not quite as unattractive as the Ulzag. They're still not great to look at. They look like the homunculus depicted in the 5th edition Monster Manual, actually. They can polymorph into either the form of a raven or a giant rat at will, and are equipped with a tail that has a wicked stinger on the end of it, like an imp. The poison imparts the poison condition, and while the effect is more like a dexterity drain than the strength drain of the Ulzag, the victim will also suffer from paralysis if they gain any exhaustion levels while under the effects of the toxin. The Gretch are also immune to mind-affecting spells and create a spell-like effect of slow once per day. The Felgar are attractive with an appearance like a classic cherub with no horns, just brightly coloured little wings. The Felgar can polymorph at will into a black cat or a hawk. They are very fast and agile, quick to react, with an advantage on initiative rolls. They don't have any poison, but instead use their long tail as a whip. They can innately see invisible objects and creatures, and can cast protection from good and evil up to 3 times per day as the spell. Several homunculus-like familiars of the Mystara campaign setting appeared in the Mystara Monstrous Compendium Appendix, printed in 1994, including the Arith familiar and the Bogan familiar. In the 1988, the Breather Elemental Homunculus and the Skin Elemental Homunculus appeared in the Planescape Monstrous Compendium Appendix 3. We learn a little more about the ecology here, including that although their native immortal form can exist without food, water or rest, while in the primaterial realm they function as a flesh and blood creature, needing all of those things. These incarnated homunculus familiars can speak, but rarely choose to communicate with anyone except their masters. They normally assist their master in all manner of tasks, from magical experiments to epic quests. Their special abilities make them adept at spying and scouting enemy camps, and because of the harm a familiar's death can inflict on its master, wizards seldom use them as guards and warriors for obvious reasons. Familiars make their homes wherever their masters live, and the two seldom stray very far from each other. The Arith homunculus has the most unassuming appearance of any familiar. These tiny humanoids are only 1 foot tall and have bright green eyes and translucent skin the colour of black pearl. The Arith's long tail and delicate wings seem thin almost to the point of invisibility. They almost look like insectile. And Arith can polymorph into either a spider monkey or a sparrow. In combat, the familiar attacks with its tail, which contains hundreds of tiny sopophoric stingers in its tip, and anyone struck by the tail suffers 1d4 points of damage and must make a successful saving throw or fall asleep for 2d4 rounds. The amazingly perceptive Arith can detect lies with advantage. In addition, it can cast protection from evil and good as per the spell 3 times per day, and the Arith never willingly serves a master not of a good alignment. The tiny Bogan homunculus has sharp humanoid features. Its skin and 4 petite wings bear the mottled blue-green hue of a dragonfly, while its short, scaly tail is either a bright blue or green. Its eyes are large and blue and help make this creature remarkably attractive. In fact, many mortals have met their doom after becoming infatuated and betrayed by one of these deceptive cuties. A Bogan can polymorph into a garter snake or a macaw parrot. In combat, it either lashes out with its tail that boasts a knife-sharp edge along the 2/3 of its length, or it bites with its venomous teeth. Anyone the Bogan bites must make a constitution saving throw or shake uncontrollably for 1d4 rounds, taking disadvantage on all attack rolls or dexterity-based skill checks. Bogans themselves are immune to all poisons. These cunning familiars can cast Charm Person 3 times per day. They will talk to anyone they feel that they can manipulate or hurt, occasionally even allowing themselves to be bound to good aligned wizards in the hopes of eventually bringing about their master's downfall. Obviously, they're more comfortable working for evil spellcasters. The Breather and Skin Elemental Homunculi are more like tools than creatures. They were created by a conclave of evil wizards working for a secret society called the Takarim. The Breather inhales the toxic air from the para-elemental plane of ash, for instance, and exhales pure fresh air. So when kept close to the mouth, it allows its master to breathe safely. The skin elemental homunculi are more like a suit worn to absorb damage before it reaches the wearer. Both forms of elemental homunculi are created for specific hostile environments, and they have the added advantage of being easily repaired by magic that will heal any living creature. More than one adventurer has spent their very last healing spell on the elemental skin suit rather than get immolated on the plane of fire. Feel free to introduce these historic, somewhat higher tier optional versions of homunculi for your campaign, perhaps beef up their hit points a little bit, but otherwise leave them close to how the homunculus is listed in the 5th edition monster manual. There's no reason to get overly complicated when adapting stuff from older editions. Just treat the differences like a template overlaid on the existing monster listing that most closely matches the creature's basic attributes. You can't really go wrong. There are a number of different homunculi specifically for the Eberron campaign setting, including the dedicated right homunculus, the expeditious messenger homunculus, the furtive pilcher homunculus, and the iron defender homunculus, with the addition of the arbalaster homunculus and the packmate homunculus, and the persistent harrier homunculus, with the publishing of the Magic of Eberron sourcebook and the main Eberron campaign book, all published in 2004. I won't go into details with those. They're pretty much solely restricted to Eberron campaign setting. In 5th edition, the homunculi were created through mysticism and alchemy, using the spellcaster's own blood, along with ash, fresh spring water, mandrake root, and clay in a ritual process. The appearance of homunculus, and by the way, they don't go into the details of that ritual process, so I'll leave that entirely up to you. Refer back to the start of this video if you want to see the creepy details of how it was originally depicted. The appearance of the homunculus varied based on the will of its creator. Many homunculi appeared to be winged humanoid creatures similar to gargoyles or tiny demons, as you see in the monster manual. The one pictured in the core monster manual for 5th edition certainly has that mini gargoyle appearance, but many spellcasters prefer to make their homunculi appear more human. Vain mages may even make these constructs look like miniature winged versions of themselves. Vitality is transferred into the construct constantly, thanks to a link formed by the caster's own blood, and this blood link provides a special bond between the homunculus and its creator, but also leaves the creator vulnerable. In previous editions, when the construct is destroyed, as mentioned, the creator takes some damage, but in 5th edition, this is no longer the case. The construct is completely loyal to its master and can telepathically transmit anything it can see or hear back to its creator, and the bond is both ways. So anyone who managed to somehow capture and magically interrogate the tiny creation through magic or aggressive psychic powers can learn anything that they want about the caster, as through the homunculus they have full access to this to the master's mind and senses. Although the construct possesses a telepathic link to its creator, it can never speak, as no homunculi is created with a voice. Creating a homunculus is a lengthy and difficult procedure, but it's superior to a normal familiar in that it can share its sensory experiences directly, with zero delay, across any distance on the same plane of existence as its master. Essentially, it is a permanent scrying effect on little wings and legs. As the process of creating one is tiresome and often unpleasantly biological, the spellcaster can have only one of them at a time. They tend to protect them carefully. There is no reason a homunculus cannot benefit from a ring of invisibility or a tiny cloak of protection. They may not be any good with weapons, but they can make use of poisons and jab needles full of toxins into people, or sneak around and slip poison into food or water skins. They have a very average intelligence on their own, but a personality that is a match to its creator, roughly. It's always they always rely on instructions from their master. When cut off from immediate contact, or if their master is incapacitated or not available to ask for directions, they'll do their best to anticipate what their master would tell them to do. Otherwise, they become quite agitated and will go into a kind of a self-preservation mode, hiding and fleeing from danger until their master begins sending their thoughts to them again. It's not clear whether leaving the same plane is, like if they get separated by a plane of existence, whether they die. I don't think they actually do immediately. On very rare occasion, when they are out of contact with their master, the creature itself has very little instinct and personality. They're vacant, bland, and have no imagination. They can't adapt well, have poor memory, and if their master dies, they instantly die as well, wherever they are. Familiars have some free will. The homunculus does not. It will do whatever its creator instructs it telepathically or verbally to do without question. so they're superior in that sense, I suppose. They're superior servants. Many who are experienced in the arcane will recognize a homunculus for what it is and speak to it as though they were speaking to the master directly. In essence, that's exactly what they're doing, but they tend to dismiss the fact that the homunculi can be quite dangerous if not observed closely. Left unattended, they can sabotage, poison, lay traps, set off alarms, alert enemy forces, and cause all sorts of problems at the behest of their master. While they appear to be living creatures, they do not have a life force or a soul of their own. They can be healed, but they're not living creatures, independently living. They're merely cheap copies, temporary vessels, mobile extensions of the mage who controls and fuels them with their own life force. I'd also suggest, if it's a homunculus controlled by a non-player character in your game, feel free to skirt around the no-speaking rule and provide the minion with some little speaker box or amulet that allows the bad or good NPC to speak through them, if that better serves your story. Stat-wise, the 5th edition Homunculus is pretty simple. It has an armor class of 13, it's got 2d4 hit points, a ground speed of 20 feet, flight speed of 40 feet per round, reasonably high dexterity of 15, average elsewhere except for a very low strength and quite low charisma, an immunity to poison, dark vision out to 60 feet, passive perception of 10, additional immunity to being charmed, and a bite attack, +4 to hit, which does 1 point of piercing damage, plus the receiver must make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned for 1 minute. However, in the unlikely case that they fail the saving throw by 5 points or more, boy, you'd really have to bomb that roll, they will be poisoned and unconscious for 1d10 minutes. And I'm thinking this is a magical sort of effect, rather than the homunculus having any sort of poison, toxin-producing glands or anything. Finally, in case anyone asks, you cannot eat a homunculus. They are made of dirt, poisonous mandrake root, and old blood. This also makes for an interesting possible use to the homunculus as a weapon. A dragon or other monster that eats the tiny construct, unless they are immune to poisoning, could actually die. And don't forget, having the homunculus destroyed doesn't harm the spellcaster who's in control of it these days. The effect of eating mandrake root are blurred vision, dilation of the pupils, dryness of the mouth, difficulty in urinating, dizziness, headache, vomiting, blushing, and a rapid heart rate, with hyperactivity and hallucinations pretty much assured. Death is preceded by unconsciousness, followed by asphyxiation. Like, subscribe, check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos, buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, check out Patron Blades for a mighty smooth shave, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.